it's been a nice sunny day today, so I thought I'd make use of the opportunity to actually use the light to set up a nice looking kind of look in video. And what I want to do here is use the light for two jobs really. One is to give a main key light using a reflector here that will light the front of me, and as the sun is behind me, to use it also as a backlight or a hair light. So the job, by doing that, it should set me apart from the background, which is handy here because it's not particularly nice, the background, and to keep the interest on the subject in the foreground. Also, I've got the 1.8mm, the 1.8 50mm Canon lens wide open, so that should also help to distance myself from the background, in that the background should be a little bit out of focus as well. I'm not very far in front, only about 6 foot. There's not a lot of room in this particular garden. So that's basically it. And we're going to have a look at something you need to know regarding exposure on the camera, and that's to get the correct exposure here, to use the spot metering, and that's available in the photographic mode on the camera rather than the video, but I'll show you how you can use it in the video mode as well. So that's what we're going to look at today, and it's fairly cheap to do. Just need a reflector. I'd advise you getting a stand, a reasonable stand, clamps and a sandbag. Today it's been quite windy, so I mean that's going to fall over unless you have something to securely to hold it with. Not having the luxury of having an assistant, I'm stuck with it. Also, you might find useful if you're setting up your own shots is the dummy's head. This is the Bruce Willis model, and it's very handy if you're shooting on your own or setting stuff up, in that you can set exposure, composition and focus as well using that. This one's I've just stuck it on a light stand the same height as myself, and I've also clamped underneath it another very useful tool, which is this mid-grey card, photographic grey card, 18% grey. You can buy them very cheap, all these items, and you can buy this on the internet cheap, and I'd really advise getting that because it really helps you setting the exposure, and we'll see why as we come and set the exposure in this scene. So that's everything. So let's have a look now at setting a scene up. Okay, the first thing you need to do is to position your subject. So I've just stuck it probably around about, I would guess, 9 to 10 feet away from the background. You could try it a little bit closer, but the nice thing about having that sort of a distance there, it makes it slightly blurry if you set your aperture wide on your lens. So it's good to have a distance from the background, just because the effect, it makes the subject stand out much better, in my opinion. So that's the first thing. I've obviously set this to be the same level as my head, so it's easy for me to actually focus plus do the exposure on it. And this grey card we'll have a look at in a second as well. So that's it, basically on a light stand. And here, we come over here, you'll see what you want to do here is with your gold reflector. I'll just take it off here for a second, off the clip here. And you can see there, it's a gold reflector. And on the reverse of this particular one is a white reflector. I quite like the gold because it projects a little bit further. So with this, I've just attached it to a clamp here, and what you want to do is just test where the light goes, and you can see there as I move it around, it hits the subject at a certain angle from the sun, which is pretty well sort of probably around about 1 o'clock up ahead there behind. This is a south-facing garden here, so having got the right angle there, I'm just going to attach it now to the clip. Check that's positioned correctly again. Just get it in place. I'm going to put a just to put it in place, you can see there, you can just fine-tune it a little bit. It's the hardest thing about it, one of these. And that's it, because I haven't got an assistant. So that's that set up. You can see as well from the subject, the lights come in, and you can see from the, this is why it's good to use a dummy or something like this, you can see the lights hitting where you want it, to the back here, and on me it's hitting to the behind as well. I've also set a mark down there, which is just here, a small flower pot, just to make sure I remember where to stand, because I've set quite a narrow depth of field, and I'll appear out of focus if I don't watch it, if I don't stand in the correct place. So got the overall setup, how we want it. So next thing is we're going to have a look at the settings on the camera and to get the right exposure. Okay, so the first thing to do is to set the exposure here, and that's why the grey card comes in handy, and I'll show you how. Now, the problem we have with this scene, if I show the exposure there, you can see it's overall, it's kind of almost a couple of stops underexposed. The point is, it's almost pointless the exposure setting we're getting from this, because what we want to be exposed properly is the actual face. And in the video mode on these DSLR cameras like the Canon, it only gives you what's called an evaluative exposure. Now that means it's taking the whole scene overall, and you can see comparatively the rest of the scene is quite dark. You can see there overall, and as a result it's not being lit. As a result, it's going to impact the actual exposure for the face as well. So short of having a light meter, and you need a fairly good one to deal with this situation because we've got ND filters on as well, is to use the camera's inbuilt spot meter instead of the evaluative metering. And we can do that by going into the manual mode on the camera. So if I just, the photographic mode, sorry, manual mode on the camera. So from the video I'm going to change to the manual, or to the photographic manual mode. And if I go into that now, you can see the screen comes up showing you all the settings, etc. And I'm just going to put the live view mode on there. And now we're actually not in video mode, we're actually in the mode for the camera here for photographs. So looking at the scene there. Now the good thing about what I've done is I've actually set this for manual mode for spot metering. And if I click on the quick button here, see this option here, metering mode, and I'll click on that there. I clicked on the spot metering mode. Let's go into that again. And you can see the metering modes there. That's the value. That's the one that will be set with by default, which is okay for general situations, but not with this, where we have a very different. We want our subject to stand out from a dark background. So much better to use is this, the spot metering. Now, where that crosses in the middle, that's exactly where it will take the setting. And if you look at the, I'll just press on the half press the shutter button there to show you the metering. You can see there on the grey card, if I go up, you can see for the face actually it's showing a +1 exposure. Now if you were to expose for the face, what you would do then is you would try and bring the exposure down to the middle there, but in fact that would be underexposing. And the reason is the spot meter will treat your basically face as grey, a mid-tone of grey. Now most light-skinned Caucasian skins like my own and like this dummy for example, we're actually above mid-grey. We're probably about a stop or so, maybe a stop and a half or a little bit more above. So if I go down to the grey, so what you actually want to do is expose for the correct grey so the camera is actually exposed correctly. So we're going to expose for that there, and you can see there that's pretty well okay there. And the fact it's overexposed is not actually, it'll actually be exposing now the head correctly. You can see there it's just over a stop, or a stop about lighter than a mid-grey. So that's having done your metering. I'm just going to double check and do a focus on that as well. Okay, having done the metering, what we did is simply go back to the video mode. And now we're actually in video mode. And if I just do the metering here on the scene, and you can see it's showing -2. That's because we're no longer in spot metering now in the video mode, we're in evaluative, and we can't change that. We've got the actual correct exposure set by going into that. So just to go back to the manual mode again, just to show you that. And you'll notice the settings there are the same as on the camera settings. It's 1.8 of 50, and you can see there on the grey card that indicates it's correct. I've actually achieved that by using ND filters on the front. So, and I said if I go up, if I was to just try and spot meter on that face, you can see that it's overexposed. Similarly, if I go to the background, you can see that's way underexposed. So what we want here, don't forget, is the spot metering on the grey surface. It's worth buying one of those cards. They're not expensive online. So that's that. So I'm just going to go back to the, you can see there it's the shutter speed is 50th of a second at 1.8 ISO 100. That's what's the setting for correct exposure. And then back in movie, you see it's the same setting. I just click the button, I'm back in, and it's the same setting. So having done that, I'm just going to recompose my shot as how I want it. I probably want, using my grid there, I want to kind of have it roughly there. I want some of the background light showing in as well. Okay, so I probably want it something along those lines there, maybe a little bit lower there. That's it. And I'll take the shot there. So I'm just going to let it record now. Thanks very much for watching. I hope you found that useful.